computer. Yeah.
Hi, it's so good to see you. My name is
Okay.
Yael Flusberg, and I am here with Marla to interview her about A Space Between, which is a book. The subtitle is Holistic Wellness for Menopause and Beyond. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you.
Thank
We've
you,
known
Yael.
each other for a gazillion years. I'm trying to actually think of what year it was that we first met. Well before
Um,
perimenopause.
oh yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's a good
Um,
question. I don't even know.
I bet you after this conversation we could like actually figure it out.
It would probably
This
be
is
what was before I became a yoga instructor because you were my first teacher stateside and who I still regard as my yoga teacher. Um, so that was likely 2005.
wow,
Hmm.
almost 20 years, yeah.
Yes.
19. And so much has changed, obviously, since then. And everybody looking at this can see that you're utterly gorgeous,
Oh, thank
which
you.
is which is not the stereotype that people often have about menopause. And I kind of wondered if we could actually start with that, Marla. Like it seems like menopause is having a moment.
It does. It is. I agree.
There's like menopause retreats. There's a piece of legislation that is right now gaining bipartisan support. It's something like 275 million for clinical research and programming around menopause. Why do you think? I mean, it used to be something that people would sweep under the rug, and why do you think now? Why is this? Why is it having its moment now, do you suppose?
I think now is the time because, well, for one thing, we number in the millions, and of course that grows every day. And with that, there's strength in numbers, right? And women coming into their own, as I like to think of menopause, is coming into your own or coming home to yourself, coincides with, for many women, being launched in the workplace. It coincides with a time when we should be accelerating and topping out, if you will. And when that is met with all of these symptoms that can interfere with that, of course, that gets in the way. So I think there's enough of a mass now, between what's happening in the workplace, what's happening in Hollywood, where between the rise of the sacred feminine movement, if I can even call it a movement, it's right, it's a remembering of our power, of what's been ripped away from us, through history and over time, and what we've been robbed of. I believe all of this energy, whether it is from the divine feminine or from the very practical 9 to 5 workplace, or again Hollywood giving voice to this. I believe that just that's it. That finally is enough of a mass of women feeling safe to speak up, to speak out, to share, and to demand for something better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I just want to follow up on something you said, which is that at a time when women should be at their most powerful, and certainly certain cultures look at women kind of entering this phase as as being like the wisest and the most powerful that they've been, once they're past their childbearing. You said too that, but there's all these symptoms that come in sometimes, which gets in the way of that. And it seems to me that that's a large part of why you wrote this book.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you want to, yeah,
It is.
talk about that a little bit.
It is. It's for me. It was very much the physical um, that woke me up to a life that I had allowed and that I no longer wanted to live in. And I think I, I'm I know I'm not alone in that. That the body the body speaks, and we're finally either brave enough or miserable enough to listen. And without those symptoms, um, I feel like women can stay complacent, and not create what they're truly capable of having. Um, that's been my experience. That's my experience working with women. But you mentioned in other cultures where women moving into the stage of life and beyond are revered, where women actually look forward to this time in life, because they know that they will be treated in such a way, instead of believe what we all too frequently experience in our culture is feeling less than, feeling devalued, even invisible. Um, and so it's an interesting question. Do the lack of symptoms in other cultures um, reflect what is actually happening internally, and do women in our culture experience those symptoms to a much greater degree because we don't have that intrinsic value for ourselves and from society. Um, of, of course, I don't know, but it's an interesting question when you think about the rates at which women in other cultures don't experience, for example, hot flashes, or don't even have words for hot flash, or osteoporosis, for example, is not experienced.
Mm.
And there's another, I can't remember the word, but instead of menopause, the word that's used is reflective of a regeneration instead. So the body knows, I guess, is my answer. Um, and if we're willing to listen, we can heal.
Right. It seems like, part of that, and of course, a lot of what you're doing is you're using Ayurvedic knowledge, which is first and foremost. I mean, when I think about Ayurveda, I think about it's the word ritam, right? Which is where in English we get the word rhythm, and
Mhm.
and that alignment is really aligning yourself with the seasons and the cycles of the day or the month or the year or the season of life. And what, and that also means this thing that's sort of contradictory, which is that, at least for me, I'm 55. I went through menopause during the pandemic, you know.
Congratulations.
Mhm. So that was kind of perfect in certain ways. And I would call them power surges, not hot flashes. Because I felt like energetically, like I am much more, I am in my prime. I mean, I'm more intuitive. I have the capacity for softness that I didn't have before because I felt like I had to keep pushing through. But I also have the capacity, and I think the awareness to know I don't I don't need to accelerate, that there's certain ways in which I
Mm,
can slow. I need, there's times when I need more. And at this time, I think I need a little bit more nourishment as
mm-hmm.
opposed to the value of pushing through, which is totally what this culture tells us all to do, regardless of season, regardless of age, right? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so it's really interesting for me to hear how we're affected also by where we are and the culture that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
And you, the book, for friends that are watching or listening to this, is not really just about menopause, but it's also about your journey to becoming this wise woman that you are now. And some of the power is really about recognizing what's yours and what belongs to others. There's so much of that for me in this book, about recognizing, for example, in your relationships, what was where you were giving too much of your power to the marriage or to the person that you were with versus taking it on for yourself. And the inverse of that also appears for me a lot in this book, where the absence of X does not necessarily equate to the presence of Y. So
Mm,
it's like not enough that we, cut out the wine at night, or uh not have coffee first thing in the morning, right? Which are a couple of the things that you talk about a little bit. You don't talk about the wine, you talk about the coffee more. um, but there's this other kind of nurturing that is not just about absence. So I don't know how that lands for you, if you've thought about the book in that way.
it well that's an interesting insight. Um, and you're I mean, you're right on. It's again the I believe when we start at the level of the body, which is for many women where it begins, um, when you can no longer ignore how you feel or how you look and want to do something about it. And so we begin at this what seems like a very superficial level of of wanting change. And then when we begin to implement new ways of being around that, of trying to cultivate wellness, of trying to heal years of bad habit, I believe that's when we are open to recognizing the role that we've played in becoming that person. It's it's very easy to sit in victimhood. It was very easy for me to sit in victimhood for a long time, and it's only in that reflection and understanding and then releasing of that, of choosing a different way, of choosing to become the victor in my story, and then ultimately choosing no story, and ultimately realizing that it's the story that keeps us small, and the story is as superficial as the physical, and the nurturing happens just as you said, with recognizing that it's okay to slow down, to change your definition of what it means to be valued or successful or um, even productive, and being willing to yield to what is a much more intuitive and natural way of being a woman, of allowing the natural cycle. I actually feel robbed of all of those years of not honoring of not honoring my cycle of far too many years of being on birth control, and I look back and I absolutely do feel robbed of
Mm.
that power, and having given into a much more masculine way of life that doesn't leave any room. The masculine is, the same thing every 24 hours. It's like physically and culturally it's the same cycle on a on 24 hours, which doesn't give any grace and doesn't give any power to women to honor monthly their own monthly rhythm. And you and I came up in a time when, when having your period was something that maybe you didn't talk about, or or you had to ignore because you had to keep going. And I'm so excited for the younger generations of today that are being educated about how to eat for their cycles, how to create what is a more productive way of being, knowing that in the early days of your cycle, that's when you can push and produce, and then that week before, right, that it's, that's just part of nature when you want to slow down and eat more carbs, and so do it. It's that is where our power is. And so coming to that realization post menopause, I'm grateful for that, and and obviously do what I can in my life today, to honor the new cycle. Menopause is very much regarded as the follicular phase of life, or the springtime of life, which I think is so cool, that
Mm.
it's really a time for creation and being full of energy and life, and we've almost been brainwashed to think that it's otherwise. And so I think I kind of got off track from your original question, but
No, it's great because I mean, I think that there's so much that we have to get rid of, like literally discharge before we can enter into that new phase. And it seems like a lot of the practical advice that's in the book, and I'm sure the more detailed and nuanced um, advice that you teach women when you're working with them one on one or in small groups, is really also about connecting to their figuring out their own rhythms within the larger rhythms of eating, rhythms of movement,
right.
rhythms of sleeping. And um and I mean, you're right. When we were young, I had migraines for years.
Yeah.
I had like, um, what do they call that? The fibrous breast. I mean, it used to be called
Yeah.
like disease, and now
Right.
they're right. And it's like these were all signs of estrogen dominance,
Yeah.
but I didn't know any of that until in perimenopause. I had breast cancer. I love that, for example, you're talking about here's where it all starts. It all starts with the gut. What you eat affects your hormone levels.
Hmm.
So you're suggesting that people simplify, and through the physical, just like yoga, a lot of yoga, through the physical, we get to other deeper layers of our being.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that journey. I'm so grateful that I've been on that, and and that is what I want for every woman to experience. And so it is cyclical, and it's beautiful in the same way as nature, in that it does start at the physical, and what I used to regard as superficial, But if we don't start there, and if we don't stop to listen, then we never get to come back to the beauty and the strength and the power and wisdom of living in the body. We we've given away so much of our power to our minds, and and that's where we create, well, that's where we create the mess. And so,
Right, right, for sure.
um in in slowing down and listening and fine tuning and becoming very mindful around the when. Just, I love that you said that. It's the when becomes so important when we're trying to heal and cultivate a new way. And again, and it's letting go of what we've been taught to believe. We all know that most study and research is done on men in this country, and white men in this country, um, and they obviously have a very different way of physically being in this world. And when we can honor our uniqueness, start to modify when I drink my coffee. Do I have wine tonight? How much water am I drinking? Food, all of it. I mean, it's we could talk for hours about the physical. Then you peel back the spiritual and emotional and realize that it comes back to the body, and making an ally out of our body is our greatest weapon for holistic wellness and happiness.
Hmm. Can I ask you, like, in your work, what are the easiest things for women at our age to adapt or adopt? And what tends to be the more challenging?
That's a great question. When i'm when i'm working with clients, so it's interesting because I don't regard myself as a weight loss coach. um However, I know a lot about weight loss and gaining weight in perimenopause and menopause, and is also very common, right? So
It's how your book starts, with you, like, trying to pull up your pants.
yes.
Oh.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's where the journey begins. And I find that many women, just, I'm like this big geek, and I spend hours like with my, reading about how food affects the body, and I study food labels, and um, that's my thing. And for a lot of women, it's not at all. And they just want to know what to do. And so for a lot of women, it's as simple as just clean starting from scratch, emptying out the pantry, adopting a whole food diet with, well, I would say no sugar, minimal sugar, and sugar even in the form of grain, and just becoming aware of how foods are digested in the body, and much like we've been brainwashed to believe that menopause and beyond is this horrible time in a woman's life. We also have been brainwashed to believe things like starting your day with oatmeal is is a great breakfast. And means on occasion, but we also don't know that, where we typically don't know that oatmeal is digested as a sugar in the body, and we shouldn't start our days on sugar. For sure, we should, especially at this time in life, we need to focus on protein, fat, and fiber. And so it's for for women, it's really just having that opportunity to to learn these like new building blocks of how to eat, of when to eat, what to focus on, what to eliminate, and when. And and that's enough. It's not, it's not hard. It's just something to want to become aware of, and then choose to change for yourself.
So would you generally recommend that people start with what they're eating and when they're eating it, and then start to work with the other things that you have, such as, mindset and movement and um, you don't say it exactly. You talk about sleep and energy levels, and you don't say it exactly, but it also woven throughout the book seems to me to be really about grief work. I mean,
Mm.
it seems to me that as older women, we've all had losses, and the whole world. I mean, there's very large losses that we're all kind of anticipating, right? The loss of our planet, our climate, for example, as we know it. And menopausal women, as the elders, are also the ones that hold that in some way. So I keep kind of pushing the same thing or circling around it. It just seems to me that with these simple practices that you're suggesting we adopt, these deeper levels start to reveal themselves.
Well, I absolutely agree. And I've I've not had anyone who's read my book suggest to me that that it is about grief.
Hmm.
When but when I hear you say that, it is. I don't even think I was aware of that. Um, giving giving way to whenever whenever we create and want to create change, right? Something has to die, and and I speak to the statue of Shiva that I have in my kitchen, that I like to keep right there front and center, um, because it is a a reminder to remember. Because when we forget, that's when we that's when we grow numb and allow what is much more natural to take place. And what is much more natural to take place is the central nervous system saying, "Whoa, I am not comfortable with all of this death that we're experiencing, the constant, literal, sometimes dying of the ego, dying of the smaller self to give way to what is truly our essence, is not
Mhm.
is not easy work." And it is scary, and it does feel like a series of small deaths, I think, to ultimately blossom into and to reveal what is truly you. And along the way, you're probably going to make a whole lot of people uncomfortable, including yourself. And it's a constant choice, whether or not you continue on that path. Um, when I when I experienced grief, in the sense that that more, I guess, more in the sense that we acknowledge or view grief. Um, when I came back to Washington, when I went back to Washington D.C. from Honduras, um, on the heels of leaving my husband and subsequently my daughter and my dogs, and um, I there was a time when I thought I would never stop crying, and that was for me, a very concentrated moment that came to symbolize all of those moments that were yet to come. That was almost the easiest moment on the journey,
Mm.
because it was so very obvious why I was crying. And when you dive in, and when you ask for the life that you deserve to live, you have to be willing to die a little, and to keep dying a little every day to become her.
Mhm.
And that is very much, um, I don't talk so much in my book about the wild woman, but I believe that's what we are dying to become,
Mhm.
is our wild women, and who we are in our energetic essence.
Mhm. You do talk about her a little bit and how we've put ourselves in these identity boxes.
Hmm.
And in some ways it's like that's what we're saying, okay, no, I can't be a wife like this. I can't be a mother like this. I can't be a sister, a daughter, a worker like this. But sometimes there is this period of time where you don't know, with all respect to Michelle Obama, like what we are becoming.
Hmm.
It's not yet clear.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That.
So if I think just kind of being aware of the time, I mean, I'm now with this book in hand, with Indigo right in hand, with everything that you're doing, um, if you could describe what life feels like to you now and how you see yourself in the world that maybe you couldn't have pictured before, because you really are mirrors, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think so many women will look to you not just as a mentor, but as a mirror for what is possible once we sort of clean the glass from all the schmutz. that's been that's like years of that, right? Like all of these false beliefs, for example.
Yeah, that's what it is. Well said. False beliefs. That's a great question. Life feels, well, better than it ever has, better than I ever could have imagined or hoped for. I feel limitless, and ho- filled with energy and gratitude and hope, um and excitement, because I now know that the journey that I've been on, and one that was incredibly painful for years and years and years, um, was just so that I could be here. That literally I can now see that it all happened for me, and and I was the creator of that. And we're just as we're all creators of our lives, and when we embrace that, it's so empowering. And and that's what I want for every woman to feel.
Mm, mm. Well, I think your story is so inspiring, um, because of your personal story, but also it comes off the page. It's so clear to me that you want to inspire women to become a deeper and more authentic version of themselves. So thank you so much for this work. Is there anything that any shout outs you'd like to do? Or if people want to get in touch with you, that kind of thing.
Oh, well, a shout out to you, first and foremost, Cal. you were um, you were so influential in my life, at a time when I really needed that. I was pretty low. I was pretty broken. And so I'm forever grateful that our paths crossed. Um, your light shines so incredibly brightly, and um, you were very much a role model for me. Um, a shout out to Dr. Clarissa Pincola Estes, whose words really lifted me from the deep depths, lifted me literally from the sofa, and woke me up to what I was doing, or what I wasn't doing, more importantly. Um, a, a shout out to my sister, who was my first editor. um, as I acknowledge her in the book, she's really the only one that could have uh, sifted her way through the weeds of the first draft. So big thank you to Kathleen, and to my mom, who was the first person to encourage me to write. So to the women, not to um, leave my father out, who created all the beautiful, incredible illustrations in the book. It was so
Mm.
much fun to work with him on that. But a shout out to uh, every woman who's seeking more, who, if if you're someone that feels that calling, feels that like ache that never goes away, I hope that if if my book is not that light on your path, that you will find one that is, and know that it that ache is your wild woman speaking to you, and
Mm.
crying for you to know that you can cultivate your best life. And if it's not with me, or with my book, again, I hope you'll find your pack. I hope you'll find your person, and know that it's never too late, and it's never too little, and this work is really just about remembering who you are. It's not finding or fixing. It's really just about remembering who you are.
Marla, that's so beautiful.
Thank you.
May we all remember who we are. And I'm just going to show the book again, a space between. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yael. My
Yeah,
pleasure.
it's been a pleasure. I'm honored. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks for your time. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Bye bye.